Welcome to Tune In with the MPSCS. I'm Brad Stoddard, Director of the Office of Michigan's Public Safety Communication System. I'm excited to welcome a very special guest with us today, Captain Kevin Sweeney. He's the Commander of the Emergency Management and Homeland Security Division and Deputy State Director of Emergency Management in the Michigan State Police, also referred to as MSP EMHSD. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Good to be here.
Well, Kevin, we appreciate you taking the time with us this morning and giving us a little bit of a background on yourself and some highlights that you can provide for us through our podcast. So as I've looked through your professional background, which is very impressive, I'm just going to share a few things, and if I've missed anything, hopefully I don't. If you definitely would fill in on some of your backgrounds so our listeners or watchers can get an idea of the very storied background that you have as a professional. You became the Deputy State Director of Emergency Management in April of 2020, which I recall was probably in the midst of COVID when you came in. Commander of the Michigan State Police Emergency Management and Homeland Security Division. Coordination of the statewide response during emergency activations, the State Emergency Operations Center, the SEOC. Had a few of those through the years since you've been there. Joined the Michigan State Police on September 24th, 1995, serving as commander of the Lakeview Post, 6th District Emergency Management Coordinator, Uniform Sergeant, and Road Patrol Trooper. Since 2015 at MCC as an adjunct instructor. I've also been enrolled as the head cross-country coach and criminal justice program coordinator. So you definitely have a lot of activities outside of your day job. You chair several committees and boards, including the Michigan Citizen Community Emergency Response Coordinating Council, the MCC ERCC, definitely a lot of C's in there. Professional Emergency Managers, the PEM Advisory Board, Michigan Homeland Security Preparedness Committee, Michigan's Public Safety Communication System, and the Security Work Group Chair as well for the MIPSCIB. You've coordinated activities statewide for the Community Emergency Response Team, CERT, and chaired the Arab Chaldean American Preparedness Advisory Committee. That's a very impressive list of activities and accomplishments. Do you sleep at all, Kevin?
Yeah, I do find time to do that. I've been very blessed to have the opportunity to do some of those things.
Well, it's I know we'll get into a few of the personal things and hobbies here in a moment, but before we get into your role and what emergency management truly entails from your visibility, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What community do you live in, and tell us about your family?
Sure, no, absolutely. Well, I'm married, wife Terry. We've been married for 29 years, been together for about 35. We have 4 adult children. All 4 have just recently, the triplets just graduated college, and our older one had graduated a few years prior to that. She's married, and we're expecting our first grandchild, so excited to have that. Everybody's starting to venture off now into their own professions, and we have one that's going to continue on into law school at Michigan State next year. So just really excited about that. We live in Rockford. We've been there for about 30 years and raised our family there, a member of a church up there, and involved with the community, do some volunteer work at the North Kent Service Center, and host a race called the Marshall Run. We've been doing that for, I think this is our 23rd year. So it's a lot of fun.
Wow. Well, so a few things in that, triplets. Wow, I did not know that. So again, go back. You didn't have a lot of sleep for a few years.
No, there was certainly some busy times.
And so one grandchild on the way. Everyone graduated. One is continuing on to law school. So, I know this is slightly off script, but what are you and your wife thinking about into retirement at some point down the road?
Well, the topics come up. She's a physical therapist. She does work part-time. And for me, I've got about 10 months to go in this role with the state. So I'll be transitioning to a different job. I don't plan to retire per se, just go into something different. But I think we'll be taking some more visits down to Florida. Our oldest is married and lives in Florida, and the one that's expecting our grandson. So I got a feeling we're going to be there quite a bit.
Well, no doubt, your spouse Terry has a lot of affection for you. 35 years, that in itself is pretty admirable. So congratulations to both of you, and all of your family as well as with one on the way. So, what do you do for fun, Kevin? What kind of hobbies do you have?
Well, we both of us, wife and I, and really the triplets too. We all love to exercise. Running's been a big part of our lives through high school and college, and the triplets again did the same thing as well. Done some triathlons over the years. I enjoy going to movies as well, so getting a little bit of downtime. But those are probably the three biggest things that I do as kind of hobbies outside of work.
Well, so you definitely, I would have thought maybe you got your running career kind of somewhat started with triplets, but my understanding though that you actually ran in college.
I did, yep. My wife and I met at Lansing Community College. We both had run there for a couple of years, and she went on to run at Grand Valley, and I went on to run at Michigan State.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. But I know there's a few things that I want to cover that are impressive about your hobbies. It's one thing to know what people see all the time, but the other aspects outside of that of the accomplishments that you've had, during your career from a hobby standpoint, but even prior to that. So I'm going to give you some accolades here, if you will. You are a marathon runner and recently completed a 50-month cross-country challenge, running a full marathon in all 50 states.
50 marathons in 50 months in 50 states. Yeah. So every month I went to a different state and ran a marathon. So every 4 weeks, give or take, I was in a car driving, 15 hours somewhere or hopping on an airplane and flying out somewhere. Slept in rest areas, showered at truck stops. Stayed, if my wife came, we stayed in a nicer hotel. If it was just me and myself, then I got something cheaper. But what was really neat about it was the kids. So 30 of those 50 marathons, a family member, a friend, somebody came with me. So that was really the neatest part about the whole thing.
That in itself is impressive. Are you thinking about doing the territories as well, or just stopping with the states?
I think we're good. We're going to focus on that grandchild coming in now.
Good. So you also coach cross country at Montcalm Community College?
I did that.
Okay.
Yeah, did that for 3 years, and also at the same time was the criminal justice program coordinator. So I did those for about 3 years, and then I've taught there for 11 years, going into my 12th year there.
So a couple of the things that, again, many of us don't always share those past accolades, but I'm going to call them out for you. You ran cross country all through college. At MSU, you co-captained the men's cross country team in 1994, earned all Big Ten honors in 94, and Teams Leadership Award in 1993. That's pretty impressive. One is you're a Spartan and you wear blue. So that itself will recognize that, but very positive. Assistant coach, White Cloud High School, Grand High School, Rockford High School, all across country.
Yeah. Rockford was more along the lines of a very involved parent, but I certainly helped out with the coaches quite a bit there. And at MSU was an academic all-conference award that I had earned there. So a lot of good success, a lot of fun, some great memories, and just some really, and again, meeting my wife there in college at LCC was obviously the highlight.
Well, no doubt that is probably the most memorable moment of all those days was that time when you guys crossed paths.
Yeah.
I'm sure she would say you were running after her versus running from her.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you were able to catch her because it created a foundation for the rest of your life between the two of you. You did say that you hosted the Marshall Run, but a few other road races that you've been involved with, Newaygo County Kids Triathlon, the Bailey's Doggy Dash, and the Rockford Area Kids. So it's one thing to, as we all know, to be very engaged in what we do at our day job. but to invest in the community is another rewarding event. So thank you for all of those. But a few other things that, our listeners may not be aware of is you have some experience with triathlons as well.
Yeah, a little bit.
So you've done 4 full distance, 3 Ironman brand, and 1 Michigan Titanium. What is a Michigan Titanium?
Well, so Ironman has kind of cornered the market on full length triathlon. So that's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and then a marathon, 26.2 miles. So there's other companies, other entities that put on full length triathlons. It's just everybody, terms it as an Ironman. So Michigan Titanium is the only company or entity that puts on a full distance triathlon in Michigan. Ironman hosts some half races, half the distance. They also host like 5Ks and 10Ks, but they don't do a full length triathlon, full distance triathlon in Michigan. So that was my first one. Was looking for something close to home where I didn't have to travel to, and was able to sign up for that one. It's in Grand Rapids, actually, on the north end. So very fortunate to have done that, and then kind of got the itch after that. I thought, okay, I'm going to go out and see what this, what's an Ironman like, the atmosphere surrounding that. Those were really neat to do. So I was able to do 3 of those after completing that one.
Well, that's pretty impressive. So you pretty much went, hey, I got a free Saturday. I think I'll just do an Ironman.
Yeah.
Wow. And I think those are the aspects that, in leadership, we all talk about, that there's a life outside of what we do at work. And, with that, there's the investment, the equal role of how much we invest at our day job and how much we invest in community ourselves. So it's great to see and hear the investments that you have in your community and yourself and your family. So thank you for sharing that, Kevin. But also with that, I know the time that I've worked with you is a number of years, but there was some years that predated us, working together, but very impressive leadership qualities. What MSP recruit school did you graduate from?
The 113th.
Yeah, so is that like the mighty 113th? Is it like the superior 113th?
Yeah, that goes without saying, Brad. I mean, it's the hardest recruit school that's ever come through.
That's what I've heard as well.
Yeah, it's the hardest. Sure. Everybody says theirs is the hardest.
So at this point, Kevin, we're going to take a little break. When we come back, we'll chat more with Captain Kevin Sweeney with the Michigan State Police, the Deputy State Director of Emergency Management.
Being prepared is a part of who you are, but it's especially important in the case of a disaster. Be informed about possible emergencies in your area. Make a plan that covers where you go in an emergency. Build a kit with the things you need to survive. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Start your plan today. Go to ready.gov/myplan.
Welcome back to Tune In with the MPSCS. I'm Brad Stoddard, Director of Michigan's Public Safety Communications System. We are back to talk with Captain Kevin Sweeney, the Deputy State Director of Emergency Management. As we were talking about before the break, Kevin, you have a very impressive career. The mighty 113th. There isn't a single marathon that you attempted to miss out on in 50 months. But can you tell us what led you on the path of law enforcement or emergency management?
Well, I guess with the law enforcement side, I was focused coming out of high school on just kind of continuing to run in college, and my mom had suggested engineering because she thought I liked math. So anyways, I picked that, continued on, got through my junior year, started to actually look ahead, some of the running stuff, those accomplishments had happened. And so I'm like, okay, what do I really want to do? And I'm like, I really don't want to be an engineer. So I want to be a teacher. Like, that's what I want to go do. So I remember riding my bike over on MSU's campus, over to the College of Education and meeting with somebody there. And they laid it all out for me and said it's going to be about 2.5 more years, with having to do some of the teaching in a classroom type thing. And I really don't see myself staying in college for another 2.5 years. So I had no idea what I was going to do. Somebody at the local ShopRite I was working at, they were going into police work, and they suggested that. So I went and I did a ride along with the city of Lansing and absolutely fell in love with it. It was a full moon night where we were driving 100 miles an hour to 10 different calls, and we actually got into a foot chase and helped tackle somebody to the ground. And it was just really, really exciting. Now, that officer let me go before they had to go do all the paperwork, so I didn't have to go through all that, but I got to do the exciting piece. So I was sold at that point. Met with a couple recruiters, and they just said finish up the degree. So I finished that degree up and had applied and actually was hired by the state police prior to graduating college. So I had a summer semester to go and then was able to start right after graduating. So it just lined up perfectly. As far as the emergency management piece, really came down here on a transfer the first time as a uniformed sergeant, looking for a job more Monday through Friday-ish, not knowing much about emergency management. At that point, they had just transitioned to Emergency Management and Homeland Security Division. And then just fell in love with it, especially the preparedness side, working with the Citizen Corps and CERT programs. And did that for about 6 years. And I left, went back to the field, but always thought I might come back to emergency management and the Homeland Security Division. And sure enough, here I am, going into my 7th year, just wrapping up 6 years here in the division in this role.
Wow. Almost 7 years. I think through the years of what I've seen is most individuals that came through in your role ended up as a colonel. So were you, any plans at that point?
No plans at that point. I think retirement is coming up quicker than anything else here. And the drop programs were kind of timed out when you enter into that drop program. So, no, I've really appreciated the opportunity. It's a busy job. There was certainly a lot of demands with it. But could not imagine being anywhere else. The team that we have is just amazing in the EMHSD.
Well, so I'm sure in as the story you shared that you were able to, help subdue, the individual and you did a ride along. Was that because you ran faster at that point?
I remember thinking I could run and I could catch this person. We hopped over a couple of fences. And I'm like, I don't want to. I don't want to. What am I going to do? And so, kind of the other officer, we got there at about the same day. She tackled him first, and then I came in on top. So, and we came down on the ground, and I was just trying to secure his hands and get him to where she could get him handcuffed. And it all happened so very quickly.
But much like your career, right? So fast.
Yeah.
Do you remember the day you first walked into recruit school, and now you're looking at 10 months out? It's surprising how quickly our careers shift like that.
It is.
So with that, Kevin, what educational path did you pursue?
So mechanical engineering, started out at a junior college there, Lansing Community College, and then transferred over to Michigan State. Got that ME degree, and then after that, I did start teaching at Mount Calm Community College, just a side job. I always enjoyed teaching, mentioned that I had wanted to be a teacher. And so I was able to really scratch that itch and then also pocket some money for travel. So we did a lot of trips down to Florida with the family, driving through the night, stretching that dollar. And we did that quite a bit. I would think spring breaks for about 15 or 16 years consecutively, minus the COVID year. So I did end up going back to get a master's degree because at the time I was told or was under the impression that you had to have a master's degree or you had to at least have a certain number of credits to teach at a community college. So I got that degree in criminal justice as that was the classes I was teaching.
Oh. Are you still teaching?
Still teaching there actively. Yeah, I just wrapped up my 11th year, going back for a 12th year. We'll see what happens. I don't plan to have 2 jobs come next spring. When the retirement with MSP hits, I'd like to scale back to 1 job. And, of course, we'll have a pension check as well. But I think the days of 2 jobs are going to wrap up here soon.
Well, congratulations on that effort. It's because it's not only are you, mentoring your team here, but you're preparing, those future leaders as well through your classes. So, thanks for taking that on. And I'm sure those in Florida were appreciative of all the tax dollars you brought down there as well.
Sure they were. Thank you.
But a few other, notable things that you hadn't identified. You were also a graduate of the FBI National Academy, the 256th session as well. That in itself is not an easy program either.
No, that it took you away from, I can't remember if it was 10 weeks or 12 weeks, but you really disconnect from MSP and they send you out there, if you're selected for it, and you go out there. And it's certified by a University of Virginia. So while you're there, you're actually earning credits. So whether it's towards a bachelor's degree or towards a master's degree, you can pick which route you want to go. So while I was out there, I was able to pick up 15 credits. And that's what really spurred me to come back then. Like, I got, all these credits. I don't want to just have them go to waste. So I reached out to MSU and found that we could transfer 9 of them over to their CJ program and then move forward. The University of Virginia was not offering an online program, so that wasn't an option to finish.
Okay, so definitely sticking with Spartan Spirit.
Go green.
Yeah,
Yes, go green.
good, because you go white. So now we'll transition a little bit, Kevin, if you're all right with that. Around some disaster responses, I know you've had a fair share of those through your 7-year tenure. Could you tell us a little bit about what your job entails, how you work to effectively prevent, prepare for, respond, recover from, and mitigate the effects of disasters or emergencies in Michigan?
Well, as you know, the disasters start local and end local. So what I mean when I say that is that the local partners, the local emergency managers, those local first responders, police and fire and EMS, they're the ones that when that disaster hits, they are the first ones to be there, boots on the ground. We are in a support role. So when they need extra assistance, when they need help from the state because things have gotten so big, so large, then that's when we really come into play. Now, of course, we're always giving guidance. You have state troopers and MDOT workers and MPSCS that's out there with radios. So there's all sorts of things happening, just boots on the ground like everybody else, when it kicks off locally. But to really get the state into high gear and to get that state emergency operations center activated, that's when they're really looking for that extra level of support or assistance. And then of course we'll do that as well. If we really run into needs at the state level because things have gotten so big, we'll reach out to the federal government and then look for their support as well. So my specific role when this kicks off is to wrap my arms around everything that the state of Michigan has to offer. So whether it's boats from the DNR or troopers from the state police or soldiers from the National Guard, or it's sandbags from MDOT or whatever it might be that our local partners are in need of, my job's to wrap my arms around it and make sure that it gets sent out in an organized and efficient manner. And there's ways that we do that. And we have a great team, right? Like I say, it's the team that does that. I'm just helping to guide it.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Through your tenure, if we set COVID aside, because that was, impactful for everybody, is there one emergency or disaster that you recall being the most memorable for whatever reason? And can you share anything on that?
I would say memorable. Some of there's been about 20, give or take-ish, that I've been involved with here in the 6 years. The ice storm from last year, the Northern Michigan ice storm in 2025, it affected 12 or 13 counties. We had one tribal partner affected as well. I think what really stood out about it was the damage and the need that was there, things we hadn't experienced before. So for instance, our local partners were asking for oxygen tanks. Why would you need oxygen tanks? Because people were homebound. They couldn't get out, and the companies that refill oxygen tanks couldn't get to their house because there was so much damage on the roads. So we had to rent oxygen tanks. We had to send the oxygen tanks up into whatever county it was that needed the tanks. The tanks had to be picked up and delivered. That's not an easy process. National Guard soldiers were used to actually deliver the tanks along with state troopers and sheriff's deputies. How do we know who needs the tanks? So we directed the public to call 211. That information was collected by 211. And then that's how that information was funneled to the emergency manager, and we got the tanks, and the tanks got delivered. But the tanks weren't there forever. We had to go and pick the tanks up and bring them back. And so all those things have a cost. It's life safety. So it has to be done in an organized and an efficient way. And that's what we're there to do. So, that was one aspect of it. We set up a portable oxygen, I say generator, but a machine where someone could drive to and actually fill up their oxygen tank there. Of course, we had 50 the locals had 50 different shelters set up that we helped to support by finding different food vendors and having food donated. We have a great public-private partnership. We call it P3. And these individuals in EMHSD have partnerships with private entities. So when something like this happens, we're able to contact them and hopefully get some resources out. And it's a two-way street. It's not just us asking from something from them all the time. It's constant communication back and forth and trainings and just different things. So again, we just are very blessed here in Michigan to have a great emergency management structure, starting with the local partners, the state level, and then our federal partners, FEMA Region 5 specifically, who we deal with. And it really works well. The system works the way it's supposed to.
That's pretty remarkable, Kevin. One thing I wanted to add is I'm familiar with this because I've worked with you and your predecessor for a number of years, but you lead a phenomenal team of resources within the Emergency Management Homeland Security Division. Can you give our listeners kind of a breakdown of what the division looks like?
Sure. Yep. We have 6 different sections within the division. Let me even back up. There's approximately 80 individuals that make up EMHSD. We have a FEMA FIT team that there are currently three, we're up to 4 different employees that are employed by FEMA, but they physically sit within our division. So that's huge because if we have something that doesn't rise to a presidential disaster declaration, but something that's smaller, they'll come in and they'll provide support and guidance and help answer any questions that we might have. So then we have 6 different sections within the division. Each one of those sections has a very unique piece of work that they do within emergency management. So finance and audit, of course, does the numbers for us, make sure we don't overspend. Risk reduction and recovery, they really have a big load that they do, especially when we get into recovery from a storm. When the response initially happens, that's typically shorter, outside of COVID and some of the others, but recovery will go on for years and years and years. And so this team is working on that, and they're also there with us right in the beginning as well. We have training and exercise, so do exactly what you think, training, exercise. They also house the radiological emergency preparedness program, which is the nuclear power plants. We currently have 2 active nuclear power plants and a third one that's looking to restart. We have the operations management section. They make sure that the State Emergency Operations Center is up and running. The lights turn on, the computers work. They also oversee MySIMS, which is a system that we use statewide to communicate with our local emergency management partners, but they can upload data, they can put photographs in there. It's an amazing system that works well and helps us, everybody stay organized and on track when we have these types of disasters. I'm going to forget one here, but public information and preparedness. This is a newer section for us, but one that we desperately needed. They're doing an amazing job when we talk about social media now. We have our own dedicated EMHSD Facebook account, so we're able to communicate with partners. We saw during the Northern Michigan ice storm that, locally they were communicating out to the public with Facebook primarily. And we have a department one, but sometimes when you have the department Facebook, any post we make can get buried very quickly. So having a dedicated emergency management one was just long overdue. So that has worked great for us. And then the last section was the state and local support section. And so those, we have district coordinators, they liaison with our emergency managers in the field, and then we have a team of planners that help to do just a multitude of work within the division. So really are blessed, and you'll hear me say it, and others have, we say a team, but it's really like a family within our division. It really is a close-knit group of individuals.
Well, like in all families, is there any dysfunctional members of the family?
Well, I won't front them out on this call here, but
the humor aside there. So Kevin, as you kind of highlighted, through the disasters, or emergencies, but can you walk our listeners through what is the process you go through when there is an emergency? So, one's been identified. What's the process then you would say from your role you lead through that effort?
Back in 2020, we had the Midland Dam issue, we had COVID, and then we had civil unrest all going on at the same time. The State Emergency Operations Center was activated for all three of those things simultaneously. But talking specifically about that flood, so again, a disaster starts local and it ends local. So the local emergency manager, the first responders were monitoring the dam and the issues surrounding that they were having there. So they recognized early on that this dam might break, it might breach due to the high water levels and the rain that was coming in. So they had taken steps to warn the public, not the state of Michigan. We weren't doing that. It's the local partners doing that. So sure enough, the dams broke, but they had gotten out appropriate messaging and people heeded the message and they left. Nobody died. There were no injuries with this because people left. And this dam break was huge. It literally washed away the village of Sanford and some other areas as well. So immediately as the dam started to break, we were getting phone calls from the county looking for support. We're going to need boats. We need people. We need, we need sandbags. We need all these types of different things. Well, it wasn't just one county. There were 5 counties that were impacted because of this. So all 5 emergency operations centers at the county level were stood up. They had operational command posts out in the field. We dispatched our district coordinators, so they go to the different local emergency operations center. They help find out what the needs are. They give us ground truth as to what's going on. Of course, DNR, state police, MDOT, National Guard was out there already doing some work with COVID, and we were able to redirect their mission set to give immediate assistance and going door to door. But some of the things they were looking for were boats to go door to door. They were looking for sandbags. They were looking for shelter support, cots. So all types of things that we're able, if we don't have it available, we can quickly get on a phone and contract it out. We can work with DTMB, who has contracts with all sorts of different entities. And so to see that system just really play out and work so efficiently and effectively. In county to county support, Oakland County sent up an incident management team to assist in Midland County because they had so much going on. They needed some extra personnel. And again, just great partnerships all around.
That's pretty impressive. As we've all lived on this side of it many times where the perception is the state does this, and as you identified it, it's really at the local level. But even with that, is inherently you've described through most of our podcasts is it's all based on relationships, the value of relationships, and building those relationships. And then I'm sure you'll be one to say much the same that build those relationships on blue sky days versus dark sky days, and it's knowing the challenges that you and your team have faced through the years. It's the value of those relationships and who to call when an emergency or disaster has occurred only helps in the partnership that you guys have out there.
And even just taking it just one step further, finishing that out. So the governor had issued then a state declaration very, very quickly for what was happening in Midland. And then the president at the time gave an emergency presidential disaster declaration. So we had FEMA involved, the state government involved. So again, it all just happened so quickly, and support and communication at all levels.
Again, a great example, walking it through from initiation all the way through to the expansive side and even, post efforts through that, which I think, many may believe that the minute that all the people leave, it's ended, but it clearly doesn't end when people leave.
That disaster is still, I say, quote unquote, open. We still are receiving federal funds for damages that had occurred during that. So absolutely. There was a flood in 2018 up in Houghton. Disaster is still open as well here 8 years later. So again, the recovery, the finance, a lot of the work, it's not over just when that emergency response is done.
So in a way, in your role is no 2 days are the same.
That's what's great. I was a commander at the Lakeview Post for 8 years, and I loved the work, and I loved being there, and it was a great post. But towards the end, it just felt like it kind of got to be the same thing, right? It was the same meetings, and there would be an officer-involved shooting, and there would be a car chase, and you kind of felt the same. Here in EMHSD, going into my 7th year, it's always different. We had a phone call from one of our partners out there looking to help move a large piece of equipment, and they thought the military might be able to help out with that because it weighed so much. And so researching that, finding out that the military did not have the capability and this piece of equipment would have to be moved by boat. You have individuals that come across when there's a storm, and they try to bring them in from Canada to come in and do work and do some utility work. We have to reach out to Customs and Border Patrol to help facilitate them crossing over. Those are just different things I never thought I'd be working on or involved with, being in law enforcement or when I joined the state police. So it's really interesting, and I learn a lot. I learn a lot about the radio systems as well and some of the work that we've done together.
Oh, well, I'd say somewhat similar to you guys, but I think you guys are way more in front of the curtain. We're the Wizard of Oz. We're behind the curtain, where you guys are more so at times on the yellow brick road, making sure the activities out there are being addressed for, all of the members and citizens of our great state. So with that, that's a great, segue into citizen preparedness. What do you recommend people do to prepare for emergencies?
Well, one of the have a plan. That is the biggest thing that you really can do. Just know what you're going to do. If the power goes out for 3 days, what's your plan? Are you going to go somewhere else? And then with the plan, part of that is to have a kit. And so the kit, we ask people here in Michigan to be prepared to go with at least 3 days without having support. And that hit home when we talk about that northern Michigan ice storm. We literally could not get to people's houses in that first 24, 36 hours and later in some cases because the roads were so damaged with the trees that had fallen over from the ice. You just couldn't get through. People went a couple weeks without power up there. So having that plan in place, having that preparedness kit, they can go to the miready.gov page, Michigan Ready. If you Google that, you'll find that and be able to see a checklist of items, and then also be able to put together a preparedness plan as well. Some things to think about if you have a pet, if you have a parent that has a lot of medications, where are you going to get those things from? So all things to think through and just have that game plan in place.
Clearly, some easy ones are planned for 3 days. Basics of food, water, blankets, and the medicine, as you stated. And for those with pets, don't forget to have the appropriate items for them as well. So now as you're, planning to transition away from, say government service, or at least in the law enforcement aspect, Kevin, what advice would you give a student or individuals looking to get into law enforcement emergency management?
I think in both cases, a couple things hold true. So whether it's law enforcement, whether it's emergency management, first and foremost, stay out of trouble. That's probably the biggest thing. The second thing is to do something productive, after you're 18 and you graduate. So typically somebody would go to college. In a lot of cases, you need a 4-year degree. It's not all the time. We don't require a 4-year degree to be a law enforcement officer with the state police, but the majority of the emergency management jobs would require you to have a 4-year degree. Whether it's going into the military, or it's going into the Peace Corps, or it's having a nice steady job where you work well and you do a good job there, do something productive. I'd also encourage individuals, this is public service, right? So do something service oriented, get involved with your community and volunteer your time.
Well, thank you, Kevin. It's no doubt for our listeners, if you wanted to have a role model in both professional space as well as outside of here, Kevin would be a great role model from those pieces. As you heard through the podcast, he's very passionate about the things he gets involved with, whether it may be running or every day leading a phenomenal team within Emergency Management and Homeland Security Division. And not to be lost in that is leading a spectacular family life. Wife Terry, set of triplets, and plus one, and not to be lost on the plus one, and a grandchild soon on the way. So, to have success in all three of those categories is something to, stand tall. So our listeners, Kevin is a great example of how you can dedicate your life into doing what's great for your family, your community, as well as in your career. So with that, Kevin, what is the best advice you've ever received and you'd like to share with others?
Well, I guess sharing advice, and I've heard this from some others before, is to have balance at work, and you just kind of mentioned those things, and thank you for those kind words. Having that balance so that you are not overly invested, especially into work. I've seen, a lot of retirements over the years. The state police does a great job with retirement ceremonies. And I've seen individuals get up there and, they're just leaving on a high note and everything's just really perfect. I've seen others get up there that shed some tears and they have a little bit of regret because they spent maybe too many hours at work. And so I kind of always heeded that advice. Remember a couple of those specifically, and recognize that MSP is amazing, and I'm so blessed to have had this as a career, but it is just one part of me. Faith and family, work, all, your health, all those things are really just equally important, and faith above all else. So having the ability to transition into something new, and whether it's you can't run anymore, so you got to walk, or whether I'm not a law enforcement anymore because I've got to leave, but I still have other pieces of my identity and really able to make that transition. So the best advice I can give to somebody is to have that type of balance and to make sure that they're not overcommitting into any one area.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I think that is, great advice. And with advice, there's always the other side. Do you have any memorable stories you'd like to share?
There are so many amazing stories, both on the law enforcement side and both on the emergency management side. I don't think I could pick, any just one on. I just like to, thank all the family, the friends, and the co-workers and the family workers, that we referred to in EMHSD. It has just been an amazing time within the department, especially these last 6-7 years.
Oh, good. Well, no doubt 10 months from now, there will be some memorable stories that will be shared. As we prepare to wrap up, Kevin, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners and watchers that maybe we may have missed?
No, I think I'd really just like to reiterate a big thank you to you for having me here on the program, and then thanks for all that you do with the MPSCS as well. So that's all.
Well, thank you, Kevin. It was great chatting with you today. If you've been an inspiration to many of us. I've had the opportunity to work with you for a number of years in multiple capacities. We definitely appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us, given your busy schedule. We appreciate the investment of time, not only that you're providing us today for the podcast, but what you put in for the decades of service for the citizens of the state of Michigan and your role in law enforcement, as well as not to be lost in, your educational opportunities that you had, mentoring that next generation of leadership in that space too. So that's all we have for today. And I want to thank Captain Kevin Sweeney, Deputy State Director of Emergency Management, Michigan State Police, and the state of Michigan for joining us. We hope you enjoy the show. We'll be back soon. Thank you, and you have a great day.
You have been listening to Tune In with MPSCS. Be sure to look us up at www.michigan.gov/MPSCS, YouTube, SoundCloud, LinkedIn, and on Twitter at MPSCS. You can also subscribe to our podcast in iTunes so you never miss an episode. We will see you next time.